The dust from the open road swirled up in angry clouds as Violet Neville stumbled backward, her cheek stinging from her brother's backhand. The Montana Territory sun beat down mercilessly in the summer of 1876, offering no relief as she watched her last living relative, Edwin, gesture wildly toward her while clutching a half-empty bottle of cheap whiskey. $10 is highway robbery for this piss water. I'll throw in my sister to sweeten the deal, Edwin slurred, gripping Violet's arm so tightly she could feel the bruises forming beneath her threadbare calico dress. The shopkeeper, a balding man with yellowed teeth and a predatory smile, eyed Violet with undisguised interest. At 20 years old, she was pretty despite the circumstances, auburn hair falling in tangled waves to her waist, green eyes sharp with intelligence and fear, her slender figure visible despite the ill-fitting hand-me-down dress. "Well now," the shopkeeper drawled, moving from behind his counter. "That's an interesting proposition, Eddie. Girl like that might be worth something to the right buyer." Violet's heart hammered against her ribs. 3 years of enduring Edwin's escalating cruelty since their parents' deaths had prepared her for many things, but not this, not being bartered away like livestock. She tried to wrench her arm free, but Edwin's grip only tightened. "She cooks decent enough and doesn't talk back much," Edwin continued, as if describing a horse for sale. "Consider it payment for my tab and throw in a bottle of the good stuff." The shopkeeper was close enough now that Violet could smell the tobacco on his breath. "Might be I could arrange something. I'll take her home." The deep voice cut through the dusty air of the general store like a thunderclap. All eyes turned to the tall figure silhouetted in the doorway. The man stepped forward, spurs jangling softly with each deliberate stride. His face was partially shadowed by a well-worn cowboy hat, but Violet could see he was young, perhaps mid-20s, with a strong jaw dusted with stubble and eyes the color of a storm-swept sky. "Ain't for sale to you, Rivers," Edwin spat, recognition flickering in his bloodshot eyes. "Didn't ask if she was," the cowboy replied evenly, stopping a few feet away. "Said I'm taking her home." Violet recognized him now, August Rivers, foreman at the Shadow Creek Ranch just outside of town. She'd seen him occasionally at church socials, though they'd never spoken. He had a reputation as a fair but formidable man who kept to himself. "This ain't your business," Edwin hissed, swaying slightly on his feet. August's eyes flickered to Violet, noting the red mark blooming on her cheek and the way she trembled. Something dangerous flashed across his features. "Making it my business," he said. Then, to the shopkeeper, "Tom, I reckon Sheriff Hayes would be mighty interested to hear you're accepting human payment for whiskey." The shopkeeper paled, backing up a step. "Now, August, this was Eddie's idea, not mine." August nodded slowly, then reached into his pocket and tossed a few coins onto the counter. "That covers his tab, and this," he added another coin, "is for a bottle of your best whiskey." The shopkeeper hurried to retrieve the bottle, eager to conclude the uncomfortable transaction. August took the whiskey and turned to Edwin. "Seems fair. You wanted whiskey for your sister, now you've got it." He handed the bottle to Edwin, who snatched it greedily. "And I'll be escorting the lady home." Edwin clutched the bottle to his chest, momentarily distracted by his prize. August stepped forward and gently but firmly removed Violet's arm from her brother's grasp. "Come along, Miss Neville," he said quietly. Violet hesitated, looking between the cowboy and her brother. Edwin was already uncorking the bottle, his interest in her seemingly forgotten in favor of his new acquisition. "Where?" she began. "Somewhere safe," August promised, his voice too low for the others to hear. "You have my word." The sincerity in his eyes made her decision. Whatever awaited her with this stranger couldn't be worse than what her brother had just attempted. With a small nod, she allowed August to lead her from the store. Outside, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the dusty main street of Riverspend. August led her to where his horse, a magnificent chestnut stallion, was hitched. "Can you ride?" he asked, untying the reins. Yes, Violet answered, finding her voice at last. But where are you taking me? August studied her for a moment. My sister lives just outside town with her husband. Her name's Alice. She could use help with the children, and you look like you could use a safe place to stay. He paused. Unless you'd rather go back to your brother? No, Violet said quickly. No, I wouldn't. August nodded, then helped her mount the horse before swinging up behind her. The warmth of his chest against her back was oddly comforting as they set off down the road, leaving Edwin and his bottle of whiskey behind. As they rode away from town, Violet realized she was crying, silent tears of relief streaming down her face. For the first time in 3 years, she felt the faintest stirring of hope. August pretended not to notice her tears, keeping his eyes fixed on the road ahead as they rode toward an uncertain future that, somehow, already felt brighter than the past they were leaving behind. The sun was beginning to set when they arrived at a modest homestead nestled against a backdrop of pine trees. A small but well-kept cabin sat in a clearing, smoke curling from its chimney. A wooden fence enclosed a vegetable garden, and chickens pecked in the yard. Before they reached the gate, a woman emerged from the cabin, wiping her hands on her apron. Her resemblance to August was unmistakable, the same storm-gray eyes and strong features, though her brown hair was pulled back in a neat bun. August. Wasn't expecting you today, she called, then noticed Violet. Curiosity and concern immediately crossed her face. August dismounted first, then helped Violet down with gentle hands at her waist. Alice, this is Miss Violet Neville. She's in need of someplace to stay. Alice's shrewd gaze took in Violet's bruised cheek, her trembling hands, and the way she seemed to shrink into herself. Understanding dawned in her eyes. Well, you've come to the right place then, she said warmly, approaching with an outstretched hand. I'm Alice Thompson. My husband Daniel is out checking the livestock, but he'll be back for supper. Violet took the offered hand hesitantly. I don't want to impose. Nonsense, Alice interrupted. August wouldn't have brought you if you didn't need help, and we've got plenty of room. She shot her brother a questioning look, clearly wanting more details. Edwin Neville tried to trade her for whiskey at Tom's store, August said quietly. Alice's expression hardened. Did he now? She slipped an arm around Violet's shoulders. Well, you're safe here, dear. Come inside and we'll get you settled. August cleared his throat. I should get back to the ranch. You'll do no such thing, Alice declared. You'll stay for supper. Daniel will want to thank you properly. The look she gave her brother conveyed a deeper message that Violet couldn't decipher. August hesitated, then nodded. I'll see to my horse first. As he led the stallion toward a small stable, Alice guided Violet into the cabin. The interior was simple but homey. A stone fireplace dominated one wall. A sturdy table with benches occupied the center, and a rocking chair sat in the corner. Through a doorway, Violet glimpsed a sleeping area. The children are napping, Alice explained, following her gaze. 2 little ones, Lily's 4 and Noah's almost 2. Mr. Rivers said you might need help with them, Violet ventured. Alice smiled. August is thoughtful that way, and yes, I could use an extra pair of hands. She motioned for Violet to sit at the table. But first, let's tend to that cheek. As Alice gently cleaned the mark left by Edwin's hand, Violet found herself relaxing slightly. The simple kindness nearly undid her composure. Has he done this before? Alice asked softly. Violet nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. And August stopped him today. Yes, Violet whispered. I don't know what would have happened if he hadn't come in when he did. Alice's lips pressed into a thin line. My brother has a habit of being in the right place at the right time. She put down the cloth she'd been using. You're welcome to stay here as long as you need, Violet. We've got a small room off the kitchen that will give you privacy. I can work, Violet assured her quickly. I'm good with cooking and sewing, and I've cared for children before. I'm sure you are, and we'll sort all that out, Alice said. But tonight you rest. Tomorrow's soon enough to worry about arrangements. The door opened and August stepped in, removing his hat. Horse is settled, he said, hanging the hat on a peg by the door. Without the shadow of the hat, Violet could see his features more clearly. His brown hair was cut short, his face tanned from working outdoors. He was handsome in a rugged way, with laugh lines at the corners of his eyes that suggested he smiled more often than he had today. "Thank you," Violet said, meeting his gaze, "for what you did." August shrugged uncomfortably. No man worth his salt would have done different. "Oh, I think plenty would have," Alice contradicted, shooting her brother an approving look. "Don't diminish what you did, August." Before August could respond, the patter of small feet announced the arrival of a sleepy-eyed little girl with dark braids and her father's gray eyes. "Uncle August," she cried, launching herself at him. August's transformation was immediate and startling. His stern expression melted into a broad smile as he caught the child and swung her up into his arms. "There's my lily flower, growing like a weed, aren't you?" The little girl giggled, then noticed Violet. Suddenly shy, she buried her face in August's shoulder. "Lily, this is Miss Violet," Alice said. "She's going to be staying with us for a while." Lily peeked out with one eye. "Is she your sweetheart, Uncle August?" August's cheeks colored slightly. "No, darlin', Miss Violet is a friend who needs a safe place to stay." Violet felt her own face warm at the child's innocent question. August's eyes met hers briefly over Lily's head, and something unspoken passed between them, an acknowledgement of the strange circumstances that had brought them together. The moment was broken by the wail of a toddler from the bedroom. Alice sighed. "That'll be Noah, excuse me." As Alice went to tend to her son, August set Lily down. The little girl immediately approached Violet. "Do you know how to play dolls?" she asked hopefully. Despite everything, Violet found herself smiling. "I do, as a matter of fact." "Good," Lily declared. "Because Uncle August is terrible at it. He always makes the papa doll ride a horse even when he's supposed to be having tea." August chuckled. "That's because tea parties are boring, Lily Flower." "Are not," Lily protested. Violet watched their interaction with a strange ache in her chest. This was what family should be: warm, teasing, safe. Something she'd almost forgotten existed. Alice returned with a tousle-haired little boy on her hip. "Look who's awake and hungry as a bear," she said cheerfully. "Violet, would you mind holding Noah while I finish preparing supper?" "Of course," Violet said, standing to take the child. Noah regarded her solemnly for a moment before deciding she was acceptable and settling against her shoulder. "He likes you," Alice observed. "Usually takes him days to warm up to strangers. Children can sense good people," came a new voice as the front door opened again. A tall, broad-shouldered man with kind eyes and a weathered face entered, removing his work gloves. "And you must be good people indeed, miss, for my son to take to you so quickly." "Daniel, this is Violet Neville," Alice said, crossing to her husband. "August brought her. She'll be staying with us." Daniel nodded, seeming to understand the situation without further explanation. "You're most welcome here, Miss Neville." "Thank you, Mr. Thompson," Violet replied, bouncing Noah gently as he played with a lock of her hair. "August," Daniel greeted, extending a hand to the younger man. "Good to see you." August shook his brother-in-law's hand. "Daniel." "Staying for supper, I hope?" Alice insisted, August said with a small smile. "Smart woman," Daniel replied, winking at his wife. "Always listen to Alice, that's my policy." The easy banter continued as they all pitched in to prepare the meal. Violet, still holding Noah, watched in wonder as this family, strangers to her just hours ago, moved around each other with practiced familiarity, including her as if she belonged. When they sat down to eat, Daniel said a blessing over the food, thanking God for bringing Violet safely to them. The simple acknowledgement of her presence as something to be thankful for nearly brought tears to her eyes again. Throughout the meal, she caught August watching her with an unreadable expression. Each time their eyes met, he would quickly look away, focusing on answering Lily's endless questions or helping Noah with his food. As twilight deepened outside, August reluctantly announced he needed to return to the ranch. "The men will be wondering where I've got to," he explained, rising from the table. "You'll come back soon." Lily asked, clinging to his leg. "Course I will, Lily Flower." He ruffled her hair, then looked at Violet. "Miss Neville, if you need anything, Shadow Creek Ranch is just 4 miles east." "Anyone there can find me," Violet nodded. "Thank you again, Mr. Rivers." "August," he corrected gently. "Mr. Rivers was my father." "August," she repeated, the name feeling strange on her tongue. He nodded once, retrieved his hat, and with a final farewell to his family, stepped out into the gathering darkness. Daniel followed him outside, presumably to walk him to his horse. Alice began clearing the table, humming softly as she worked. "He's not always so serious," she told Violet, catching her staring at the door August had just exited through. "My brother, I mean. He's carried a lot of responsibility since our parents passed 5 years back." "I understand that burden," Violet said quietly, helping to stack plates. "My parents died of fever 3 years ago. That's when Edwin—" She stopped, unwilling to complete the thought. Alice's expression softened. "When did he start drinking?" "After the war," Violet answered. "He came back different. Father could control him somewhat, but after our parents died." She shrugged, the gesture conveying years of accumulated pain. "And there was no one else? No family to help?" Violet shook her head. "Our only other family is back east. They offered to take me in after Mother and Father died, but Edwin wouldn't allow it. He needed someone to keep house," he said. Alice's eyes flashed with anger. "Well, you're free of him now, and you're welcome here for as long as you wish to stay." Daniel returned, closing the door against the cool night air. "August is worried Edwin might come looking for Violet," he told his wife. "Let him try," Alice said fiercely. "He'll find no welcome here." "August said the same," Daniel replied with a slight smile, in somewhat stronger terms. Later that night, lying in the small but comfortable bed in the room off the kitchen, Violet stared at the ceiling, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the Thompson household settling for the night. The events of the day played through her mind in a bewildering parade. This morning, she had awakened in the dilapidated cabin she shared with Edwin, dreading another day of his unpredictable temper. Tonight, she was here, surrounded by kindness she'd almost forgotten existed. And it was all because of August Rivers, a man she barely knew who had stepped forward when no one else would. As sleep finally claimed her, Violet's last conscious thought was of storm-gray eyes and a gentle voice promising safety. For the first time in years, she slept without fear. The days that followed took on a rhythm that Violet found deeply comforting. She rose early with Alice to prepare breakfast, helped with the children throughout the day, and assisted with household chores. The work was familiar, but the atmosphere couldn't have been more different from life with Edwin. Here, her efforts were appreciated. Daniel thanked her for mending his shirts. Alice praised her cooking. Lily followed her everywhere, chattering endlessly, and even little Noah sought her out for comfort when he skinned his knee. A week passed, then 2. Violet found herself laughing more, the tightness in her shoulders gradually easing. Only at night, lying in bed, did she allow herself to wonder about Edwin. Had he come looking for her? Was he even sober enough to remember what had happened? And inevitably, her thoughts would turn to August. He had visited twice since that first day, once to bring supplies from town, and again to help Daniel repair the roof. Both times, he'd been polite but distant with Violet, speaking to her only when necessary. It was during his 3rd visit, nearly 3 weeks after he'd brought her to the homestead, that everything changed. August arrived mid-morning on a Sunday, having missed church services due to ranch business. Violet was in the garden, harvesting vegetables for dinner, when she heard the now familiar sound of his horse approaching. She straightened, brushing dirt from her hands onto the apron Alice had sewn for her. The borrowed dresses were still a bit large, but Alice had helped her take them in, and Violet no longer felt like she was drowning in fabric. August dismounted, leading his horse to the water trough. He glanced toward the garden, raising a hand in greeting when he spotted her. Violet returned the gesture, then bent back to her task, telling herself the sudden flutter in her stomach was simply surprise at his arrival. A few minutes later, a shadow fell across the garden bed where she worked. "Miss Neville," August said, his voice as deep and steady as she remembered. "Mr. Rivers," she replied, looking up at him. "I mean August," the corner of his mouth twitched. "How are you settling in?" "Very well, thank you." She hesitated, then added, "Your sister and her family have been incredibly kind." August nodded, looking pleased. "Alice has a good heart." "Always has." "It seems to run in the family," Violet said softly. A faint flush appeared on his tanned cheeks. "Just did what needed doing." Before Violet could respond, Lily came tearing around the corner of the house, shrieking with delight at the sight of her uncle. August's face transformed with that now familiar smile as he caught her up in his arms. "Uncle August, did you bring me a present?" Lily asked, patting his pockets hopefully. August feigned offense. "Is that all I'm good for, presents?" Lily giggled. "No, silly. You're good for stories and horseback rides too." "Well, as it happens," August said, reaching into his vest pocket, "I did bring something." He produced a small wooden horse, intricately carved. "Made it myself." Lily's eyes widened as she accepted the gift. "It looks just like your horse." "Thank you, Uncle August." She hugged him fiercely, then wiggled to be put down. "I have to show Mama," she declared, racing back toward the house. "You carved that?" Violet asked, impressed. August shrugged. "Passes the time in the evenings." Violet studied him thoughtfully. "You're not at all what I expected." "How's that?" I'd heard about August Rivers before, the stern foreman at Shadow Creek who doesn't suffer fools and can outwork any 3 men. She smiled slightly. "No one mentioned you carve toys for your niece or step in to rescue women in distress." August looked uncomfortable with her assessment. "People see what they expect to see." "And what do you see when you look at me?" The question slipped out before Violet could stop it. She immediately wished she could take it back, heat rising to her face. August regarded her seriously for a long moment. "I see someone who's stronger than she knows," he finally said. "Someone who deserved better than what life handed her." The simple honesty of his words stole Violet's breath. Before she could formulate a response, Daniel called from the barn, asking for August's help with a stubborn wagon wheel. "Excuse me," August said, tipping his hat slightly before striding away. Violet remained in the garden, her hands trembling slightly as she resumed her work. No one had ever seen her that way before, as strong, as deserving. The fact that it was August who did made it matter all the more, though she wasn't ready to examine why. The day passed pleasantly. After the midday meal, August took Lily for the promised horseback ride while Violet helped Alice preserve vegetables for the coming winter. When they returned, Lily was bubbling with excitement, recounting every detail of their adventure. As evening approached, Daniel invited August to stay the night rather than ride back to the ranch in darkness. "The bunkhouse can spare you for one night," he insisted. Besides, Alice made apple pie. August hesitated, then acquiesced with a nod. "Can't turn down Alice's pie." After supper, while Alice was putting the children to bed, the 3 adults sat around the fireplace. Daniel smoked his pipe while August and Violet sipped coffee. "Any word about Edwin in town?" August asked Daniel, his voice low. Daniel shook his head. "Been in a few times for supplies." "Haven't seen him, but Tom at the store says he's been asking about Violet. Nothing threatening, just wondering where she went." Violet's hands tightened around her cup. "I'm sorry to bring trouble to your door." "You've brought no trouble," Daniel assured her. "Only help and pleasant company." "Still," August said, "might be best if I have a word with the sheriff next time I'm in town. Make sure he knows the situation." "I can handle Edwin," Violet said, a hint of her old defensiveness returning. August's eyes met hers across the room. "Never doubted it." "But you shouldn't have to, not anymore." The conviction in his voice warmed something deep inside her. Before she could respond, Alice returned, announcing the children were finally asleep. The conversation turned to lighter topics: the coming harvest, town gossip, plans for the fall festival. Violet found herself laughing at Daniel's dry humor and Alice's stories about the children's antics. Throughout the evening, she was acutely aware of August's presence. Though he spoke little, his attention rarely wavered from her. Whenever she glanced his way, she found those storm-gray eyes watching her with an intensity that made her heart beat faster. Later, after Daniel and Alice had retired for the night, Violet lingered by the fire. August remained as well, seemingly in no hurry for sleep. "May I ask you something?" Violet said after a comfortable silence had stretched between them. August nodded. "Why did you help me that day? The truth." August considered her question, absently turning his coffee cup in his hands. "I knew Edwin from before the war," he finally said. "We weren't friends, but I knew him. He was always wild, but not cruel. When he came back, something in him had changed." He paused, staring into the dying fire. "I'd heard rumors about how he treated you, but folks around here don't like to interfere in family matters. That day in the store," his jaw tightened. "No decent man could walk away from that." "So it was decency," Violet said softly, unexpectedly disappointed. August's eyes found hers. "At first," he admitted, "but when I saw you standing there, refusing to break despite everything." He shook his head slightly. "There was something about your courage that day. I couldn't get it out of my mind." Violet's breath caught. "I wasn't brave, I was terrified." "Being afraid doesn't mean you aren't brave," August said. "It means you faced your fear and stood your ground anyway." The sincerity in his voice made her chest ache. No one had ever seen her that way before, as brave rather than helpless. "Thank you," she whispered. "Not just for that day, but for seeing me as someone worth helping." August leaned forward slightly. "Violet, you're worth far more than." A sudden crash from outside interrupted him. They both jumped to their feet as Daniel emerged from the bedroom, rifle in hand. "Stay here," he told Violet while he and August moved to the window. "Edwin's horse," August said grimly, peering into the darkness. "Looks like he's finally come looking." Violet's heart pounded as Daniel and August stepped outside to confront her brother. She moved to the window, straining to see in the dim light of the moon. Edwin stood swaying near the gate, clearly drunk. "No, she's here," he shouted. "Give me back my sister." "Go home, Edwin," Daniel's voice carried clearly. "Sleep it off." "She's my property," Edwin slurred. "Got rights. She's a person, not property." August's voice was dangerously calm. "And she's staying right where she is." Edwin cursed viciously. "Always thought you were better'n everyone, Rivers. First the war, now this." "This has nothing to do with the war," August replied. "It's about how you treat your sister." "What I do with my kin ain't your concern." "It became my concern when you tried to sell her for whiskey," August countered. "Now get on your horse and go home before you do something you'll regret." Edwin's laugh was ugly. "Already done plenty I regret. What's one more?" His hand moved to his belt, where Violet knew he kept a knife. Before she could cry out a warning, Edwin lunged forward, blade flashing in the moonlight. August sidestepped with a quickness that spoke of experience, catching Edwin's wrist and twisting until the knife fell to the dirt. In the same fluid motion, he spun Edwin around, pinning the smaller man's arm behind his back. "That was foolish, Edwin," August said, his voice still eerily calm. "Very foolish." Edwin struggled uselessly. "Let go of me, you bastard. I'm going to release you," August told him. "And you're going to get on your horse and ride away. If you ever come near Violet again, or if you ever threaten any member of this family, I will personally ensure you regret it for the rest of your days. Do we understand each other?" The cold authority in his voice sent a shiver down Violet's spine. This was the August Rivers that people in town spoke of with respect, tinged with fear, the man who commanded others through sheer force of will. Edwin must have sensed it too, because he stopped struggling. "Fine," he muttered. "Keep her, she ain't worth the trouble anyway." August released him with a slight push. Edwin stumbled, then righted himself, glaring at both men before retrieving his knife and stalking back to his horse. "This ain't over, Rivers," he called as he mounted. "Not by a long shot." Then he wheeled his horse around and galloped away into the night. Daniel and August stood watching until the sound of hoofbeats faded. Only then did they return to the cabin, where Violet waited with Alice, who had been awakened by the commotion. "He's gone," Daniel assured them. "For now, at least. He'll be back," August said grimly. "Not tonight, but eventually, when he's sober enough to plan and drunk enough to be dangerous." "What do we do?" Alice asked, clutching her robe closed at her throat. August looked at Violet. "That depends on what Miss Neville wants." All eyes turned to her. Violet took a deep breath, steeling herself. "I won't bring danger to your home," she told the Thompsons. "You've been so kind, but if Edwin is determined to cause trouble—" "Nonsense," Alice interrupted. "We're not sending you away, Violet. This is your home now, too." "Alice is right," Daniel agreed, "but we should be prepared just in case." August nodded. "I'll speak to Sheriff Hayes tomorrow, make sure he knows what happened, and I'll have some of the ranch hands keep an eye out when they're in town." His eyes met Violet's. "If you'd feel safer elsewhere, I understand, but know that you have choices now, Violet. No one's going to force you to do anything you don't want to do, not ever again." The fierce protectiveness in his voice wrapped around her like a physical embrace. For the first time in years, Violet felt truly safe. "I want to stay," she said firmly, "if you'll have me." "Of course we will," Alice said immediately, hugging her. Daniel nodded his agreement. "Your family now, Violet, family." The word echoed in her mind as they all finally retired for the night. She had a family again, one that chose her, protected her, valued her. And as she drifted toward sleep, Violet realized that the most surprising part of all was how much she had come to care for August Rivers in such a short time. His quiet strength, his unexpected gentleness, the way he looked at her as if she mattered, all of it had wormed its way past her carefully constructed defenses. It was terrifying. It was exhilarating, and she had no idea what to do about it. Morning arrived with golden sunlight streaming through Violet's window. She dressed quickly, eager to help Alice with breakfast before the children woke. But when she entered the kitchen, she found August already there, stoking the fire in the cookstove. "Good morning," he said, straightening at her approach. "Alice is still asleep. Thought I'd get things started." "I didn't know you could cook," Violet said, moving to help him. August's mouth quirked in a half-smile. "Been fending for myself since I was 16. Can't claim to be as good as you or Alice, but I can manage bacon and eggs without burning down the place." They worked together in comfortable silence, moving around the small kitchen with surprising ease. August seemed to anticipate her movements, stepping aside just as she needed to reach the flour bin, handing her the salt before she could ask for it. "About last night," he said finally, keeping his voice low. "I'm sorry you had to see that confrontation with your brother." "Don't be," Violet replied, measuring coffee into the pot. "It needed to happen eventually." August studied her profile. "You're taking it better than I expected." Violet shrugged slightly. "The Edwin I knew, the brother who taught me to fish and defended me from bullies, he's been gone a long time. The man who came here last night is a stranger wearing my brother's face. The war changed many men," August said quietly. "Some found their way back, others never did." Something in his tone made Violet look up. "You fought too?" It wasn't a question, but August nodded anyway. 2 years with the Union cavalry. Is that how you knew Edwin? From the war?" "No, we served in different regiments, but I saw enough men come home changed to recognize the signs." He paused in his work, a shadow crossing his features. "Some turned to drink, some to violence. Some just couldn't find peace again." "And you?" Violet asked softly. "How did you find your way back?" August was silent for so long she thought he might not answer. "Family," he finally said. "Alice wouldn't let me disappear into myself and work honest work with the land and animals. There's something healing in it." Violet nodded, understanding. In the weeks she'd been with the Thompsons, she'd felt that same healing power in the rhythm of daily chores, in watching things grow, in caring for others. "I'm glad you found your way back," she said simply. August's eyes met hers, something warm and unguarded in their depths. "So am I." The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken possibilities. Then the patter of small feet broke the spell as Lily came running into the kitchen, still in her nightgown. "Uncle August, you're still here." she exclaimed, flinging herself at him. August caught her with practiced ease. "Course I am, Lily Flower. Promised to fix that doll cradle before I left, didn't I?" The rest of the morning passed in a flurry of activity. After breakfast, August set to work on the promised repair while Daniel tended the livestock. Violet helped Alice with laundry, all the while aware of August's presence just outside the cabin where he worked. By midday, August announced he needed to return to the ranch. "Boss will think I've run off if I don't show my face soon," he explained, though everyone knew he was referring to the ranch owner who relied heavily on August's management. As he prepared to leave, he asked to speak with Violet privately. Curious, she followed him to the edge of the property where his horse waited. "I'll be in town tomorrow," he told her. "Thought you might want to come along, see about getting some things of your own." Violet blinked in surprise. "I couldn't impose, it's not an imposition," August interrupted gently. "Alice mentioned you've been making do with her hand-me-downs. Thought you might like something that's just yours." The thoughtfulness of the gesture caught Violet off guard. "I don't have any money," she admitted. "Consider it repayment for all the help you've given Alice," August suggested. When she still hesitated, he added, "Please, Violet, let me do this for you." The use of her first name without the formal miss sent a pleasant shiver through her. "All right," she agreed. "Thank you." August nodded, seemingly pleased. "I'll come by after breakfast tomorrow, then." As he mounted his horse, Violet found herself already looking forward to seeing him again. The realization both thrilled and frightened her. It was dangerous to let herself care too much, to hope for things that might never be. Yet, as she watched him ride away, Violet couldn't deny the warmth that spread through her chest whenever August was near. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a future that held more than mere survival, one that might even include happiness. The thought sustained her through the rest of the day and into the night, where dreams of storm, gray eyes, and gentle hands followed her into sleep. The next morning dawned clear and bright. Violet woke early, an unfamiliar nervous energy coursing through her. She dressed carefully in the best of Alice's hand-me-downs, a blue calico dress that Alice had helped her take in, and braided her hair in a more elaborate style than usual. "Someone's eager for a trip to town," Alice teased as Violet helped prepare breakfast with unusual haste. Violet felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I'm just looking forward to getting out for a bit," she said, avoiding Alice's knowing gaze. "MMHMM," Alice hummed skeptically. "And my brother's company has nothing to do with it, Alice," Violet protested, mortification washing over her. Alice laughed, patting Violet's arm. "I'm only teasing, dear, though I must say it does my heart good to see August taking an interest in someone. He's been alone too long." Before Violet could formulate a response, the sound of approaching hoofbeats announced August's arrival. She busied herself with the dishes, trying to calm her racing heart. August entered, removing his hat as he greeted the family. His eyes found Violet immediately, lingering a moment longer than necessary. "Ready to go, Miss Neville?" he asked. "Yes," she replied, drying her hands on her apron before removing it. "And please, after all this time, I think you can call me Violet." A small smile touched his lips. "Violet, then." The ride to town was pleasant, with August pointing out landmarks and sharing stories about the area. Violet found herself relaxing in his company, laughing at his dry observations about the local characters they might encounter. Riverspend was a small but growing town, with a main street that boasted a general store, a saloon, a church, and a handful of other businesses. As August helped Violet down from his horse in front of the general store, she couldn't help but remember the last time she'd been there, the day Edwin had tried to trade her for whiskey. August seemed to read her thoughts. "We can go somewhere else if you'd prefer," he offered quietly. Violet squared her shoulders. "No, I won't let Edwin make me afraid to show my face." Approval flashed in August's eyes. "Brave as always," he murmured, offering his arm. Inside, the store was much as Violet remembered, though seeing it without fear coloring her perception made it seem less oppressive. The shopkeeper, Tom, looked up as they entered, his expression changing from welcome to wariness when he recognized Violet. "Mr. Rivers," he greeted cautiously. "Miss Neville." "Tom," August replied with a curt nod. "We're here for some supplies. Miss Neville needs fabric for new dresses and whatever else ladies require." Tom glanced between them, clearly uncertain about the situation. "Of course, Sarah can help with that." He called to his wife, who emerged from the back room. Mrs. Wilson was a plump, pleasant woman who showed no sign of discomfort at Violet's presence. "Well now, what are we looking for today?" she asked cheerfully. As Violet explained her needs, August stepped away to gather other supplies. Mrs. Wilson led Violet to the fabric section, offering suggestions and asking about patterns. "You're staying with the Thompsons, I hear," Mrs. Wilson said as she measured out calico. "Yes," Violet confirmed, bracing for judgment. Instead, Mrs. Wilson smiled warmly. "Lovely family. And August Rivers is a good man, despite that stern exterior." She lowered her voice conspiratorially. "Half the unmarried women in the county have set their caps for him, but he never seemed interested. Until now, perhaps." Violet felt her face flame. "Mr. Rivers is simply being kind," she protested. Mrs. Wilson's knowing smile suggested she thought otherwise, but she didn't press the issue. "Well, kindness is a fine foundation for stronger feelings, don't you think?" Before Violet could respond, August returned with an armful of supplies. "Found everything we need?" he asked. "Almost," Mrs. Wilson answered for Violet. "Just finishing up with the fabric. Oh, and Miss Neville should probably look at the ready-made undergarments. I doubt she wants your input on those, Mr. Rivers." Now it was August's turn to look uncomfortable. "I'll wait outside," he muttered, depositing his items on the counter and beating a hasty retreat. Mrs. Wilson chuckled. "Strong as an ox, brave as a lion, but mention ladies' undergarments and he runs like a startled rabbit. Men are such curious creatures." Despite her embarrassment, Violet found herself laughing along. There was something wonderfully ordinary about this shopping trip, something she hadn't experienced since before her parents died. For a brief, shining moment, she felt like any other young woman in town with a gentleman caller, not a rescued victim with a violent brother. When she finally joined August outside, he had already loaded their purchases onto his horse. "All set?" he asked, studiously avoiding looking at the package that undoubtedly contained the undergarments Mrs. Wilson had insisted she needed. "Yes, thank you," Violet said. "You really didn't have to do all this." "Wanted to," August replied simply. He hesitated, then added, "Thought we might get some lunch at the hotel before heading back, if you'd like." The unexpected invitation sent a flutter through Violet's stomach. "I'd like that very much." The hotel restaurant was small but clean, offering simple fare served on actual china plates, a luxury Violet hadn't experienced in years. As they ate, she found herself opening up to August about her life before Edwin's decline, her dreams of becoming a teacher, the books she loved, the piano lessons her mother had insisted upon. "Do you still play?" August asked. Violet shook her head. "Edwin sold the piano soon after our parents died, said we needed the money for whiskey." A muscle ticked in August's jaw, but his voice remained even. "There's a piano at the ranch house. Owner's wife brought it from back east, but she rarely plays it anymore. Perhaps you could visit sometime, get reacquainted with the keys." The invitation hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning beyond the simple offer. Violet found herself nodding. "I'd like that." Their meal concluded, they began the journey back to the Thompson homestead. The afternoon sun was warm on Violet's face as they rode, August's solid presence behind her a comforting anchor. "Thank you for today," she said as the cabin came into view. "For everything." August's arms tightened slightly around her waist. "My pleasure," he replied, his breath warm against her ear. That evening, as Violet showed Alice her purchases, she couldn't keep the smile from her face. Alice watched her with knowing eyes but refrained from teasing, simply offering to help with the sewing. Over the next few weeks, a pattern emerged. August found reasons to visit the Thompson homestead with increasing frequency, bringing supplies, helping with repairs, taking Lily for promised rides. Each visit included time spent with Violet, whether working alongside her in the garden or simply sitting together after the children were in bed. They spoke of everything and nothing: his work at the ranch, her growing bond with the Thompson children, books they had read, dreams they still harbored. Slowly, carefully, they revealed themselves to each other, building a foundation of friendship that gradually shifted into something deeper. Summer gave way to early autumn, the days growing shorter as harvest time approached. August arrived one crisp morning with news that the ranch owner was hosting a harvest dance. "Thought you might like to attend," he said to Violet as they walked to the barn where he was helping Daniel mend a harness. "If you want to, that is." Violet's heart skipped. "Like a proper dance." With music and everything, August smiled at her enthusiasm. "Everything. Owner's wife hired musicians from Helena. There'll be food, dancing, the works." "I'd love to go," Violet said, then hesitated. "But what about Edwin? He's still in town and a public event like that." "Sheriff Hayes has warned him to stay away from you," August assured her. "And I'll be right beside you the whole time. Nothing will happen to you, Violet, I promise." The conviction in his voice made her believe him. "Then yes, I'd love to attend with you." The days leading up to the dance were filled with preparations. Violet worked feverishly on a new dress from the fabric August had purchased, using a pattern Mrs. Wilson had recommended. Alice helped with the more complicated sections, offering advice and encouragement. The night of the dance arrived clear and cool, with stars scattered like diamonds across the velvet sky. August came to collect Violet in a borrowed buggy, dressed in his best clothes, a clean black suit that emphasized his broad shoulders, his usually unruly hair tamed for the occasion. When Violet emerged from the cabin in her new dress, a deep green that brought out the color of her eyes, August went very still. For a moment, he simply stared, his expression making her heart race. "You look beautiful," he finally said, his voice rougher than usual. "Thank you," Violet replied, suddenly shy. "You look very handsome yourself." Alice, watching from the doorway with Daniel, made a small sound that might have been a suppressed laugh. "You two better get going if you want to make it before all the good dancing is done," she said, shooing them toward the buggy. The ride to Shadow Creek Ranch passed in a blur of nervous excitement. As they approached, Violet could see the main house ablaze with light. Lanterns hung from trees to illuminate the yard where a wooden platform had been constructed for dancing. "It's beautiful," she breathed as August helped her down from the buggy. "Not half as beautiful as you," he replied quietly, offering his arm. The evening was everything Violet had dreamed and more. The music was lively, the food plentiful, and August never left her side. He introduced her to the ranch owner and his wife, to the other hands and their families, never once giving anyone reason to question her presence or her past. When he led her onto the dance floor, his hand warm at her waist, Violet felt as if she were floating. August moved with surprising grace for such a large man, guiding her through the steps with confidence. "Where did you learn to dance?" she asked as they twirled to a waltz. "My mother insisted," he replied with a small smile. "Said no son of hers would grow up unable to properly escort a lady around a dance floor." "She taught you well," Violet said, following his lead. August's eyes softened. "She would have liked you very much." The simple statement, offered so earnestly, made Violet's breath catch. "I wish I could have met her." "So do I," August said softly. As the evening progressed, Violet became aware of curious glances and whispered conversations. It didn't take long to realize that she and August were the subject of considerable interest. "Everyone's staring," she murmured during a particularly slow dance that had August holding her closer than propriety strictly allowed. "Let them," he replied, unconcerned. "They're just surprised to see me with the prettiest woman at the dance." Violet ducked her head, pleased despite her embarrassment. "I doubt that's all they're talking about. The last time most of these people saw me, I was the pathetic Neville girl with the drunk brother. August's hand tightened at her waist. Anyone who thinks that isn't worth your concern, he said firmly. You've never been pathetic, Violet, not even at your lowest. The conviction in his voice made her look up, meeting his intense gaze. How can you be so sure? Because I know you, he answered simply. I've seen your strength, your kindness, your determination. The woman I know would never be pathetic. Something shifted between them in that moment, a barrier falling away, a truth acknowledged. Violet felt it like a physical change in the air around them. August, she began, not entirely sure what she wanted to say, but knowing she needed to say something. Before she could continue, a commotion near the entrance to the yard interrupted the music. Raised voices carried across the suddenly quiet gathering. August straightened, his expression darkening as he recognized one of the voices. Stay here, he told Violet, moving toward the disturbance, but Violet followed, heart pounding. She already knew who she would see. Edwin stood swaying at the edge of the yard, obviously drunk and belligerent. Two ranch hands were blocking his path while the sheriff tried to reason with him. Just want to see my sister, Edwin was saying, his words slurred. No, she's here with that bastard Rivers. You need to leave, Edwin, Sheriff Hayes said firmly. You're in no condition to be here. Not going anywhere without Violet, Edwin insisted. She's my responsibility. She's not your property, August's voice cut through the tension as he approached, and she's not going anywhere with you. Edwin's bloodshot eyes found August, narrowing with hatred. You stole her away. Turned her against me. She made her own choice, August replied evenly, and it wasn't you. Edwin lunged forward suddenly, breaking past the men restraining him. You think you're so much better than me, he snarled, drawing a pistol from his coat. But you're not. You're nothing but a thief. Several women screamed as the gun appeared. The sheriff reached for his own weapon, but August held up a hand, stopping him. Put it down, Edwin, he said calmly. You don't want to do this. Don't tell me what I want, Edwin shouted, the gun wavering in his unsteady hand. You took everything from me. No, Edwin, Violet said, stepping forward despite August's attempt to keep her back. You threw everything away yourself. Edwin's eyes widened at the sight of her. Violet, he said, his voice suddenly plaintive. Come home, Violet, I need you. I am home, she replied steadily. I've found a place where I'm valued, not used, where I'm protected, not threatened. I won't go back to living in fear, Edwin. He's turned you against me, Edwin said, his face contorting with rage. He swung the gun toward August. I'll kill him. Then you'll come home. Everything happened very quickly after that. Violet shouted a warning as Edwin's finger tightened on the trigger. August moved with startling speed, pushing Violet behind him while lunging toward Edwin. The gun discharged with a deafening crack. For a terrible moment, Violet thought August had been hit. But it was Edwin who crumpled to the ground, the sheriff's bullet finding its mark before Edwin could get off a second shot. Chaos erupted. Women screamed, men rushed forward, and the sheriff knelt beside Edwin, checking for signs of life. August turned to Violet, his hands gripping her shoulders. Are you hurt? He demanded, eyes scanning her for injuries. No, she managed, shaking violently. I'm fine, he assured her, pulling her against his chest. It's over, you're safe. Over August's shoulder, Violet could see the sheriff shaking his head. Edwin was dead, his unseeing eyes staring up at the star-filled sky. A strange numbness settled over her. She had spent years fearing her brother, then weeks dreading his reappearance in her life. Now he was gone, and all she felt was a profound emptiness where her fear had been. August must have felt her trembling because he tightened his embrace. I've got you, he murmured against her hair. I've got you. The rest of the night passed in a blur. The sheriff took statements from witnesses, all of whom confirmed that Edwin had drawn first and that the shooting was justified. The dance, unsurprisingly, came to an early end, guests departing in subdued groups. August never left Violet's side, his quiet strength anchoring her through the nightmare of formalities that followed a violent death. When all was finally settled, he took her back to the Thompson homestead, where Alice and Daniel waited up, having heard the news from a neighbor. Alice enfolded Violet in a warm embrace the moment she entered. "Oh, my dear girl," she murmured, "I'm so sorry." "He made his choice," Violet said, her voice hollow even to her own ears. "A long time ago." That night Violet didn't sleep. She sat by the window in her small room, watching the stars fade as dawn approached. She felt oddly disconnected from herself, as if the woman who had danced so joyfully earlier was someone else entirely. A soft knock at her door roused her from her thoughts. August entered at her quiet invitation, his face grave with concern. "Thought you might not be sleeping," he said, moving to stand beside her at the window. "Want to talk about it?" Violet shook her head, then reconsidered. "I don't know what to feel," she admitted. "He was my brother, but he stopped being the Edwin I knew years ago. Is it wrong that I feel relieved he's gone?" August considered her question with the seriousness it deserved. "I think it's human," he finally said. "You mourned the brother you loved a long time ago." This was just the end of the ghost that remained. His understanding loosened something tight in Violet's chest. Tears came then, not for the man who had died tonight, but for the brother she had lost to war and whiskey years before. August gathered her gently into his arms, letting her cry against his shoulder. He made no attempt to shush her or offer empty platitudes, simply held her until the storm passed. When her tears finally subsided, Violet became aware of their position, her pressed against August's chest, his arms around her, both of them in night clothes. In other circumstances, it would have been scandalously improper, but propriety seemed a distant concern after the night's events. "I should go," August said reluctantly, seeming to realize the same thing. "Try to get some rest." But as he moved to release her, Violet found herself clinging to his shirt. "Stay," she whispered. "Just until I fall asleep, please." August hesitated, torn between propriety and her obvious need for comfort. "Alice would have my hide," he said, but his tone was gentle. "I don't think she would," Violet replied. "Not tonight." After a moment's more hesitation, August nodded. "All right, until you fall asleep." He settled into the room's single chair while Violet lay down on the bed, pulling the quilt up to her chin. They remained in silence for a while, the only sound their quiet breathing. "August," Violet said eventually, her voice small in the darkness. Thank you for everything." She heard him shift in the chair. "No thanks needed," he replied softly. "Now sleep, Violet, I'll be here." Comforted by his presence, Violet finally drifted into exhausted slumber. The days following Edwin's death were difficult but necessary. There was a funeral to arrange, meager possessions to sort through, legalities to address. Through it all, August remained steadfastly at Violet's side, handling what she could not, supporting her through what she must face herself. The funeral was sparsely attended, a few townsfolk who remembered the Edwin from before the war, the sheriff out of respect for the office, August and the Thompsons out of support for Violet. She stood dry-eyed as her brother was laid to rest beside their parents, feeling a complex mixture of grief, relief, and finality. "He's at peace now," Alice said gently as they walked away from the grave. "And so can you be." Violet nodded, knowing Alice was right. With Edwin's death, the last tie to her old life was severed. She was free to build something new without looking over her shoulder, without fear shadowing her steps. As fall deepened toward winter, life at the Thompson homestead settled into a comfortable routine. Violet threw herself into preparations for the coming cold months, preserving food, mending clothes, helping Alice teach Lily her letters. August visited when his duties at the ranch allowed, always bringing small gifts, a book he thought she'd enjoy, candy for the children, once even a set of combs for her hair. It was during one of these visits, as the first snow of the season dusted the ground, that August asked Violet to walk with him despite the cold. Curious, she wrapped herself in a shawl and accompanied him to the edge of the property, where a small creek gurgled beneath a thin layer of ice. "Been thinking a lot lately," August began, his breath forming clouds in the crisp air. About the future. Violet's heart quickened. Oh, August nodded, suddenly seeming uncharacteristically nervous. The ranch owners offered me a parcel of land as payment for 5 years' service. Good land with water rights, enough to build a decent spread of my own. August, that's wonderful, Violet said sincerely. You deserve it. Thing is, he continued, staring out at the distant mountains, a man needs more than land to build a life. He turned to face her fully. He needs a partner, someone to share the work, the hardships, the joys. Violet's breath caught in her throat as August took her gloved hands in his. I'm not good with fancy words, Violet, but I think I hope you know how I feel about you. These past months, watching you rebuild your life, seeing your strength and kindness. He paused, seeming to gather his courage. I've come to care for you more than I thought possible, and I'm hoping you might feel something similar for me. I do, Violet whispered, her heart pounding so hard she was sure he must hear it. Very much so. Relief and joy washed over August's features. Then I'm asking Violet Neville if you would do me the honor of becoming my wife. Of building a life together on that land, making it into a home, perhaps raising a family someday. He squeezed her hands gently. I know it's not an easy life I'm offering, but I swear to you, you'll never know fear or want as my wife. I'll spend every day making sure of that. Tears blurred Violet's vision, not tears of sorrow like those she'd shed so often in recent years, but tears of overwhelming joy. Yes, she said, her voice breaking. Yes, August, I'll marry you. August's face transformed with a smile so radiant it took her breath away. Slowly, giving her time to withdraw if she wished, he bent to press his lips to hers in a first kiss that was both gentle and filled with promise. When they returned to the cabin, hand in hand and cheeks flushed from more than just the cold, Alice took one look at them and burst into happy tears. Finally, she exclaimed, embracing them both. I was beginning to think I'd have to lock you two in the root cellar to get you to admit your feelings. Daniel offered more subdued but equally heartfelt congratulations, clapping August on the shoulder and kissing Violet's cheek. Even the children seemed to understand something momentous had occurred, with Lily demanding to know if this meant Uncle August would be living with them now. Not here, sweetheart, August explained, lifting her into his arms, but not far away either, and you can visit whenever you like. And Miss Violet will be your wife? Lily asked, her young mind working through the implications. That's right, August confirmed, his eyes meeting Violet's over the child's head. If she'll have me. I already said yes, Violet reminded him, her heart so full she thought it might burst. The wedding took place 2 weeks later in the small church in Riversbend. It was a simple ceremony, attended by the Thompsons, August's fellow ranch hands, and a few townspeople who had come to know and respect Violet during her time with the Thompsons. Alice helped Violet prepare, styling her hair and helping her into the dress they had worked on together, ivory satin with lace trim, modest but beautiful. You look radiant, Alice said, adjusting the wreath of winter berries that served as Violet's headpiece. August won't know what hit him. Indeed, when Violet walked down the aisle on Daniel's arm, he having offered to stand in for her father, August's expression was one of stunned wonder. He stood tall and handsome in a new suit, his usually unruly hair tamed for the occasion, his eyes never leaving Violet as she approached. The ceremony was brief but heartfelt. They exchanged simple vows and rings August had saved for months to buy Violet a delicate gold band with a small diamond that caught the light from the church windows. I now pronounce you husband and wife, the minister declared. You may kiss your bride. August bent to kiss Violet with a tenderness that brought tears to her eyes. As applause erupted around them, he whispered against her lips, "Welcome home, Mrs. Rivers, home." Such a simple word for such a profound concept. As August led her back down the aisle, Violet realized that home wasn't a place at all. It was this feeling of safety, of belonging, of being truly seen and valued. It was August. The celebration afterward was held at the ranch owner's house, a gesture of goodwill toward his foreman. There was food, music, and dancing, with August refusing to let Violet out of his sight for more than a few moments at a time. "Can't believe you're really mine," he murmured during a quiet moment between dances. "Keep thinking I might wake up and find this was all a dream." Violet reached up to touch his face, reveling in the fact that she could do so freely now. "Not a dream," she assured him, "though if it is, I don't ever want to wake up." As twilight fell, they said their goodbyes and departed for the small cabin August had been preparing on his newly acquired land. It was simple but sturdy, with a stone fireplace, solid furniture August had either made or traded for, and windows that looked out over what would eventually become their ranch. "It's not much yet," August said as he carried Violet over the threshold, "but we'll build it together, piece by piece." "It's perfect," Violet replied honestly, taking in the home he had created for them. A fire was already burning in the hearth, casting a golden glow over the main room. A quilt from Alice adorned their bed, and the kitchen shelves held dishes and supplies that had been wedding gifts. Later, as they lay together in the quiet darkness, August's arms around her in a different kind of embrace than ever before, Violet marveled at how far she had come. From a woman being bartered for whiskey to a wife cherished by a good man, the journey seemed almost impossible. "What are you thinking about?" August asked, his voice a low rumble against her ear. "How strange life is," Violet answered honestly. 6 months ago I had no hope, no future, and now—" She turned in his arms to face him. "Now I have everything I never dared to dream of." August's hand came up to cup her face. "You deserve it all, Violet, every bit of happiness this world has to offer." "So do you," she whispered, pressing closer. "And I intend to spend the rest of my life making sure you have it." His kiss was her answer, a promise, a pledge, a beginning. The years that followed were not without challenges. Building a ranch from almost nothing required backbreaking work, perseverance, and sometimes sheer stubborn determination. There were harsh winters that threatened their livestock, dry summers that tested their water supply, and the ordinary hardships of frontier life. But there was joy too, abundant joy that far outweighed the difficulties. Their herd grew steadily, as did their reputation for fair dealing and quality stock. The cabin expanded to include a proper kitchen, a parlor, and eventually, additional bedrooms. Those rooms were needed, for their family grew as well. 2 years after their wedding, Violet gave birth to a daughter they named Eleanor after August's mother. A son, James, followed 18 months later, and another daughter, Mary. 2 years after that, with each child, Violet witnessed a new facet of the man she had married. August approached fatherhood with the same quiet competence he brought to everything, but with an added tenderness that never failed to move her. He taught Eleanor to ride almost before she could walk, read stories to James every night no matter how exhausted he was from ranch work, and carried Mary on his shoulders as he did his chores, her delighted giggles spurring him to ever more ridiculous antics. Violet found her own place in their community as well. When the town finally built a proper schoolhouse, she was asked to teach during the winter months when ranch work slowed. The piano August had promised appeared in their parlor on their 5th anniversary, and her music once again filled her life with beauty. They remained close with the Thompsons, with frequent visits back and forth. Lily and Noah grew up alongside the Rivers children, more like cousins than friends. Alice and Violet shared the special bond of sisters by choice, supporting each other through childbirths, illnesses, and the everyday challenges of frontier motherhood. On the 10th anniversary of their wedding, August surprised Violet with a small gathering of their closest friends and family. As twilight settled over their now prosperous ranch, with children playing in the yard and conversation flowing easily around tables set up under the trees, August pulled Violet aside. "Happy?" he asked, his arm around her waist. Violet looked around at the life they had built, the thriving ranch, the beautiful children, the community of friends, and most of all, the man beside her who had seen her worth when no one else did. "More than I ever thought possible," she answered truthfully. And you? August's eyes, still the same storm gray that had captured her attention all those years ago, crinkled at the corners as he smiled. Got everything a man could want right here, he said, kissing her forehead. And it all started because your brother tried to sell you for a bottle of whiskey. Violet shook her head, leaning into his embrace. No, she corrected gently. It all started because a cowboy said, I'll take her home. August's laugh was warm against her hair. Best decision I ever made. As the stars appeared one by one in the darkening sky, Violet sent up a silent prayer of gratitude for the man who had rescued her, for the life they had created, and for the journey that had brought her from despair to this moment of perfect contentment. Her brother had tried to sell her for a bottle of whiskey, but August Rivers had given her something far more precious, a home, a family, and a love that had only grown stronger with each passing year. And in the end, that had made all the difference.